You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hey, I hope you're enjoying these interviews. I just have a couple quick announcements before we get started. Number one is that these women that are brave, courageous, awesome women that have volunteered their time to give these interviews, to be real with us, they are working real women. They are usually hiding or in secret to do these interviews because a lot of them are still living with their loved one who's struggling with addiction. So we don't use first names and we try to protect their privacy. That's actually our biggest priority when conducting these interviews. But because we're not in professional sound studios and we're not, a Hollywood actress or actor, that look, the quality of the sound isn't always going to be perfect. You're going to hear car doors because some women are hiding in their garage giving this interview. Some women are giving this interview really early in the morning while making breakfast for their young kids. One woman was, pulled over on the side of the road in complete privacy. So I am so grateful that you are willing to be kind and nice about the quality of recording and that we're keeping it real here because we want to give you truthful, honest, unedited stories. So secondly, in today's episode, there is a lot. Oh, speaking of real, I'm in my office and just got a reminder. Sorry about that. Okay, the second thing is today's episode might be difficult to hear. We do mention some violence and we do mention guns. So I adore this interview, but it might be hard. So I'm just throwing that out there for you. And then thirdly, I just want to say from the bottom of my deepest heart to say thank you so much for leaving all of these positive reviews. I don't normally ask for them, but I read them, every one of them. And they encourage me to keep going. So I like to keep this community small. I'm not an influencer. You're not going to find me partnering with another brand or anything. I'm staying in my lane and keeping it just about addiction. So those reviews and those ratings actually help us reach other people because I don't do any news conferences or anything of that sort. So that really, really helps us. And I am very, very grateful when you do that. So I hope you enjoy today's episode from this incredibly brave woman today. And thank you again for listening. I hope it helps. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with me. I am so excited to talk to you. I am incredibly excited because we're talking about a relationship that did not result in marriage. We're talking about a boyfriend relationship. And I know we have a lot of women out there and men that are in relationships that have chosen or are not in the marriage stage. So this is going to be exciting, and I know you have a lot of really great things to share. So thank you for agreeing to be on here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to get to share my story, and I guess also that I am out of the relationship, and I'm excited to share how that happened as well. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I know this is scary, and so I really appreciate the bravery you're showing. So let's start off at the beginning with the question that I ask everyone, which is, okay, how did you meet your boyfriend, and when did you know he had a problem?
Okay. Well, I had just gotten out of a 24-year-old marriage, and so that marriage was actually a very healthy marriage. I was just very bored in that marriage, and My children had grown, and I was just ready to live. I didn't feel like I was living. So I woke up one evening and got on Facebook in the middle of the night, and I saw that a gentleman had liked 17 of my photos on a social media platform. So realized that he worked for the same company that I worked for in a different location, but we still worked together for the same company. So I had reached out to one of my friends the next day, and I said, hey, who is this fella? He liked 17 of my photos, and he kind of is intriguing me. So she said, a couple of my friends said, really nice guy. He had just went through a divorce a few years back, and they said that they could see that he was struggling maybe with a little bit of a depression. And, of course, my codependent person, I was like, aw, what a nice guy. I want to meet him. So we talked for about a month back and forth on a social media platform, and I felt like a romance. It just felt so good to me. So him and I both went on separate vacations, and we both got back on the same exact day, and I flew into the city that he lived in. And so I stayed and waited for him to get off his airplane, and that's the day that we met. So he came to my car. I jumped out of my car to meet him. He gave me the biggest hug with the biggest smile, and, ooh, this is the hard part, and he kissed me. And he had, at that point, asked me if I'd like to go to a bar to have a drink. And so we walked about 8 blocks to go to this bar, and he just stopped me. Every half block he stopped, and he just stared at me and told me how pretty I was and gave me hugs and kisses, and it was just,
wow.
It felt like such a romance in the making. So that's how I met him. It was wonderful. It was something that, after being married for 24 years, it was not something not everybody gets treated like that after being married for 24 years. So that is how we met.
That's interesting. You felt really validated, and you felt really validated, and you felt probably very flattered, and it just was what you were looking for, which was some excitement, right?
Absolutely. I felt beautiful, and I hadn't felt beautiful. All I felt like before is a mom, just a mom. So yes, he made me feel beautiful. Yes, he did. And after that first date, I think we spent most every weekend together for the next year. Since we lived a couple hours apart, we didn't get to see each other through the week, so we just talked on the phone here and there. But weekends I spent with him. And quickly, I knew something. I knew that he drank a lot. But being married for 24 years to a man who did not drink anything, I really didn't know what a lot was.
Right.
So I would come see him on the weekends, and we would go every weekend. We'd go somewhere, like a concert, or we went to cooking classes. We went and listened to bands play in little bars, or we'd stay home and he'd play his guitar and serenade me. And but everything we did on the weekends involved alcohol. But I never really looked at it that way because I just saw us going out. And obviously, if you go out to a bar to listen to music, you probably get a mixed drink. How I realized we had a problem is because I would get a mixed drink and he would get 6, 8 beers. So he never really acted drunk. He acted fine. I just thought maybe I was a lightweight. So that's kind of how that started. I did start noticing that he would pass out. He passed out on the toilet one night. He passed out in the middle of the floor one night. And the one that I think finally got me, he passed out in bed. So we went to bed, and not even seconds later he was passed out, and there was an insect flying around in his bedroom, and it was you could tell it was a rather large insect because it was making a lot of noise. I flipped on the lights. I tried to get him to wake up. He would not wake up for anything, so I ended up killing this moth. It was this huge moth, and the next morning he woke up and he looked around his room, and I'm not joking, the moth was everywhere from me killing it. And I thought at that moment, if the house would have been on fire, I wouldn't have been able to get him out. If somebody had came in and tried to rob us, he would have slept right through that. If his son would have been there and the house was on fire, what would have happened? So at that point, I knew there was a problem. I knew. I just
That's a
knew
big moment.
at that point.
It also sounds, and I don't know him. I've never met him, so this is perhaps an unfair statement to make. But it does sound like he has some codependency issues as well, which is quite common for people struggling with addiction because of the intensity that he jumped into this relationship with you. I mean, I am quite certain you are stunning and gorgeous and everything he was looking for. But it seems like there was maybe perhaps an acceleration to this relationship that might have come from a place of codependency from him. Did you ever consider that?
Yeah, I've done a lot of work listening to podcasts, going to counseling. I tinker between codependency and narcissism. And I don't know if you can be both. I really don't know if you can be both, but I do think he's very insecure. I do think that he just wants to be loved. He's a beautiful man. He oh, this is where I'll cry.
It's okay.
He's a beautiful man sober. And I do think that he has codependency issues as well. I would like to make him out to be a demon and say that he's a narcissist, but I am unsure.
Can you tell me because this is a big word, narcissist. I know that this is a big buzzword right now, particularly in our community. Can you explain to the people listening, what does a narcissist look or sound like? For you personally, what was your experience?
For me, he spent a lot of money on me. Anytime that he knew that he got me upset, he would plan a vacation. He took me on boating trips. He took me out to eat to fancy dinners, weekend getaways. He did all of these wonderful, beautiful things, but I would say threw that back in my face whenever he was mad. Look at me, I did this, and this is how you treat me. Or look at me, I took you out to this fancy dinner, but you're mad that I looked at the waitress as she walked away. Look at me, we went on this big fancy boating trip, and you got mad because I got drunk and passed out and couldn't come home. So I would have to drive him home. So there was a lot of look at me moments. Anytime he talked about people that he knew, it was always, I have this friend and he's a doctor and he makes hundreds of thousands of dollars, or met this new friend and his car is this fancy car. I mean, everything about him was where he was a little bit better. One thing he said is he passed a test at work, and he passed it with a higher score than his own boss did. So everything, he was just a little bit better. He wanted me to feel that he was better than everybody, even though he didn't really feel that.
Was there a moment when you were dating him, do you remember a moment where you realized he was doing this? Because I'm sure at the beginning, you buy it, right? You believe that they are better. And then was there a moment where you started to see, oh, this is a kind of facade. This is a marketing tactic.
Absolutely. So there were times, so I lived 2 hours away from him, and on my drives to go see him, he would go to happy hour with his buddies. And these buddies, I felt like I knew these buddies because he talked about them all the time. So we actually met to go out, and we ended up being in the same place where these buddies were, and these buddies didn't even pay attention to him. And he was embarrassed because these, in his mind, were his best friends, and when we saw them, they were all sitting at a table and never invited him to come over. And then I just kind of realized, like, this is all made up in his mind. He's probably buying rounds for these guys, and these guys accept him for those reasons.
That's fascinating. So how did that make you feel? When you had that epiphany, how did that make you feel towards him? Did that change your feelings?
My codependency made me sorry for him. My codependency built him up and let him know that he was important, even though they weren't showing him that he was important. He was such an important person to be on this world, and how much I loved him, and how he needs to, stay away from people like that because they don't love him, and not to try to, what's the right word? He doesn't need his value from people like that. And so that's what I felt like. He felt like that's what made him an important person, was to hang around owners of businesses, people that were multimillionaires. That's what gave him a sense of importance. And I tried so hard to explain that wasn't what made him a good person, what made him an important person.
So you kind of took on the role of mother in that instance, because that
absolutely.
language sounds like a very loving, motherly thing to say to a child when a child comes home from school and has a rough day. So, yes, you took more of a motherly approach.
Absolutely. And as I look back, I was talking with a child. I still, during our arguments, he was a child. He argued in a very childlike way. It took me a while to figure that out.
How would you mind going into detail about that? Well, how did he argue in a childish way? Because I think this is brilliant.
Oh, my goodness. So there were often times he would get messages at 11 or 12 o'clock at night on his phone, and I couldn't see who those were, but I knew that wasn't his son calling or messaging him. It wasn't. If he's getting messages at 11 or 12 o'clock at night, it probably wasn't messages he should be getting while he was in a relationship with a woman. So there were many times that I would confront him and just say, hey, do you mind easing my mind and letting me see who was messaging you? And at those moments, sometimes he would just, I'm sorry.
No, good for you. The way you phrased that was brilliant. I love it. So I'm just in my head going, that was excellent. Okay, sorry. So, but I said it out loud.
I tried to avoid all conflict, so that's how I would approach it. And there were times that when I would do that, he would walk into his son's room and lay on the bed and start hanging out with his son. So I would go to his bedroom door and say, could you please come back out here? We were having a conversation. Well, what he was really doing was going in there so that I wouldn't argue in front of his son, and he had a moment to be able to delete those messages. So then he would flip it on me and say, you're being controlling, you don't trust me. Well, anybody that was in their right, in a healthy spot, would have said, you know what, you're being a little controlling, but here it is. This is what I got. And he would never do that. So those were just little ways. Or he'd walk out the door. He would scream, throw something, and walk out the door. It just was, they were temper tantrums is what they were.
They were deflections, right? They were like a smoke screen to get you to not look at that. Whatever it took to not admit or just to look at that phone, that's why. That's the behavior.
Anger rages, he would take his head and pound up against a wall. Then, of course, I didn't want him to hurt himself, so I would just back away and stop. So, yeah, they were just very immature ways.
And they worked because, because we're logical, rational, thoughtful human beings. We see someone doing that to themselves, we think, oh, okay. But it does work. I mean, a lot of times.
It absolutely worked. It was a little bit fear-based, if he would do that to his head or take his hand and pound against a wall, is he going to do that to me? I hope not, but is he going to? And so those were the thoughts that would go through my mind, and that would just shut me down.
Yeah.
However, I did learn his passcode pretty quick, and I validated all my concerns by seeing things on my own. So I never was wrong. I hated to do that because I've never been in a relationship where I had to do anything like that, but I did get to validate my feelings, and I was correct.
Was he having physical relations with other people or just text messaging?
There was a lot of sexting, lots of sexting going on. My girlfriend actually set him up, and he was drunk every single night. So my girlfriend actually used her phone and said, hey, We talked not too long ago in a text, which was a lie. And she's like, I'd really like to meet you. And he talked to so many women that he didn't know that she was one that he hadn't talked to. So she asked him to meet at a bar that was just a block from his home. And we sat in the parking lot and we watched him go in. So he was going to pursue at that point a woman. And then another one, I found her phone number, sent her a message and just said, hey, because she seemed like a really nice lady on this text message. So I sent her a message, excuse me, and told her that he was in a 2-year relationship. And I just wondered if she knew. And she confirmed that they had met. She had lived an hour away. And she had confirmed to me that they had met a couple times. So I confronted him with that. And that's the only one he admitted to. And at that point, apologized, said he'd go to counseling, said that he had a sex addiction as well. And so he went to counseling for 2 times and felt like he was healed.
He felt like he was healed. Okay, I have so many questions, but first of all, I love that your friend is a great friend to go through that with you. And then I love that you had the determination to find the answers. So many women get intimidated or scared or feel like they're being snoopy. I did for years. I lived in denial. And then at the end of my marriage found out, my ex-husband, who I would have sworn would never have an affair on me, was having an affair the entire time. And I wish if I could have gone back that I would have behaved more like you, where when I had those intuitions, those, instincts, the red flags, the warning signs, I wish that I would have pursued those without fear, because I wanted to believe him so badly. I didn't want to think that he could be capable of that, because already he was behaving so badly with addiction, and then you add in infidelity, and that's just like, even how am I going to possibly mentally handle that? So I admire you so much for having the courage and tenacity to pursue that and going to the ends that you did with your friend to really see for yourself with your own eyes what is he really capable of doing. That's really wonderful.
And it was a wonderful thing, and I think that I have, I battle with, I don't, self-worth, self-love. I'm not sure exactly what the right word is. I do love myself, and I do think that I deserve more. I do not know why I stayed as long as I did, but I do think that if I didn't have self-worth, or if I didn't love myself, I probably wouldn't have wanted to know, because he took, when he was sober, he took me places I've never seen and never would have seen in my life. So it's a very hard thing to get rid of a man that gives you such great memories. I mean, we went on vacations that I personally would never been able to afford without him. So in a sense, it was scary. I wish that the answers would have been no. I wish everything I thought wouldn't have been true, because I would have married the man. I would have loved him till the end. We were very compatible, and so it was hard to realize all of this and to lose him because he was perfect in so many ways.
Can we go back to the rehab? So you confront him. He admits this one relationship. He says, I'm addicted to sex, and I have this alcohol addiction. So he checks into rehab. And how many times did he go to rehab, or how did that come about?
So he did not check into rehab. He checked.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I apologize. Okay. And then he said he was cured with the counseling.
Yes. So he went to counseling. He never, ever, still to this day, has admitted that he has a sex or an alcohol problem.
Okay.
So never, still to this day, he says he likes alcohol, but he does not have a problem. He's never admitted that. And he's also told me he will not quit. But the sex portion, he went to counseling twice. He talked to the counselor. He came back to me and said, counselor says that I'm on the right track. I'm good. I will not do this again. And so
What did you say?
I dropped it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Because I do know why I dropped it. Looking back, I can tell you why I dropped it. I dropped it because he gave me his password to his phone. I dropped it because he kept his phone out of his pocket and left it on the counter. So I felt that he was being a little more honest with me. And he said I could look at his phone at any moment. So I think that I gained a little bit of trust from him, and that's why I kind of dropped it. And he became nice again. Like he became I had just moved to a city, honestly, moved to a city and was moving into his home when this happened. And so I ended up getting my own apartment a couple miles down the road from him when this all happened. So we were actually advancing to the point that I thought next was marriage. So It saved me. That definitely saved me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he gave you his password. Do you know if he continued this behavior behind your back?
I don't know.
Okay.
Short term, I did not know, and I didn't think so because I had access. Never really used the access, but I had it. However, it was short-lived because I actually have taken pictures of it. I have over 40 pictures of different sexting that he had done after this happened. So
you are a smart cookie. That's brilliant. I love that you have photographic evidence because in case you're ever in a weaker moment, you go through back to that, and there you go.
Well, you would have thought that it would have only taken one or two. You would have thought. But,
no, hon, there's no judgment here. For gosh sake.
Oh, no.
It all takes different things.
I will tell you that this is a topic that might make me cry. I'm going to sure try not to, but I do believe any of the people that are listening need to look at trauma bonds, because I truly think. Sorry, he pulled a gun. He pulled a gun on me, and he shot it in his apartment with his son there. His son witnessed it. I witnessed it. I tried to get his son to leave with me out of the apartment. But his son stayed. I called 911 and he was arrested. He wasn't supposed to be around me for over, I think, 2 years. It got ugly, and his wife contacted me, begged me to drop the charges. Because she didn't want her son her son and daughter not to have a father. So she begged me to drop the charges. He ended up hiring an attorney on my behalf so that I didn't have to go to court. Because he didn't want to put me through that, is what he said. Really, it was because he didn't want me to speak. So he hired an attorney to do that for me. But I do believe, and then he came back with a lot of remorse and apologized and did go to counseling again for that. And again, my codependency and believing that he truly loved me and that he was sick, I stayed with him. And I do believe that caused a trauma bond, which kept me wanting to stay with him, because I was afraid of, if I didn't stay, what would he do? Would he get sicker? Would he end up killing himself? So me being the caretaker, I went back to him after that. And then another instance, he choked me. Both of these instances were because I found items on his phone. So I do believe trauma bonds exist, and I believe that that's the reason I stayed as long as I did.
And can you explain for the listeners what a trauma bond is?
I probably am not the greatest at explaining it, but from what I understand
without
about
having
it,
your degree.
I don't have a degree.
In your best. Well, you probably are, because it happened to you. And sometimes the people that are the best people to explain are not the medical professionals. It is the women or men that this has happened to. So I think there's value in whatever, you're about to say, for sure.
Yeah. So I think that when something negative happens in your life, or in your life and somebody else was involved, I think the best person to talk to about that is the person that experienced it with you. And he was the person I experienced it with, and it made me love him more. I'm trying to remember the girl's name that was taken out of her bed and taken into a woods not too far from her home. It was a huge, high-profile case where she was taken. And so those instances when somebody is like a child that's been taken, sometimes they will stick up for the person that they took because they have formed a care and a concern and a love for that person. And I think that that's what that was for me. Something terrible happened to me. He did show remorse, and he was the one person that I could go to talk about it, to cry about, to be consoled that this happened to me. I was embarrassed to tell many people. So he was my person. He experienced this life with me, and it bonded me to him. Negative or positive, it bonded me to him.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, I think that that's a great synopsis of what it is. Basically, a trauma bond is an attachment that we have with our abusers, if you don't mind me using that word. Yeah, it's when we have fond feelings or actually miss the individual that's abusing us because we've developed this very deep connection with them over the trauma. So that makes sense to me. That makes complete sense to me, and I'm glad that you brought it up. So thank you for sharing that. I am
You're
really...
welcome.
Can we talk about the gun really quickly, because I do think this is a lot of people listening have experienced domestic violence or, physical threats. Did you know there was a gun in the house?
He talked about his guns. The job that he does for a living, he could not carry a gun with him because he went into areas where guns were illegal. But he didn't. As he traveled, he would take it with him because some of the areas that he would travel into were pretty unsafe areas. So he would always talk about having a gun and having it. So I knew that he had one. I guess I knew that he had one. He did have it put up because he had a son, and so he kept it put up in a drawer. I thought secure. It was not. It was just laying in there. So yes, I did know that he had a gun, but he had never displayed it or made me feel intimidated by it by any means. And I grew up around guns, so that wasn't anything that ever intimidated me. So yes, did know he had one, did not know he was capable of what he did.
So this was completely out of the blue. Yes. I mean, for the most part. In other words, I'm so sorry, I'm not trying to lead you to a conclusion. I'm just thinking of the women out there that are living with somebody that has access to a gun, and we often think, they would never do anything with it. My safety's not at risk. And I'm trying to just say in a very indirect way, perhaps we should reconsider that notion.
Absolutely. So I will definitely tell you my feelings about it today. If a man or a woman if there's any instability at all, I now will say guns should not even be allowed. He is not allowed to have a gun still to this day. They've been taken away from him, and he cannot get one legally. He did show it to me, and I never thought anything of it. Looking back now, I do believe that was a bit of an intimidation tactic. Looking back, I didn't realize it at the time. And he was so excited to get a new gun after his 2-year probation was over. He actually did try to go get 2 new guns. He never told me, but I found the evidence in his drawer that he was trying to, and he can't get them. So anybody that has any kind of mental instability, whether that's alcohol, drugs, a mental disorder, I would not want to be in a home with somebody with that instability, I guess.
particularly with a child.
What happened that night did not warrant, again, being pulled. He was passed out on my lap. His phone was buzzing. I got on it. There was a woman waiting for him to respond. When he woke up, he saw that I had his phone, and I told him, you might want to respond to her. She's eager to get a hold of you. And he threw me across the room, through my work computer. I grabbed my stuff as fast as I could, screamed at his son to come with me because his son was in the hall, and he shot the gun. We never found the bullet. We don't know where he actually shot at, but the police could confirm that it was shot. And he did it out of total rage and anger. He's even still to this day says he doesn't remember. Well, he was drunk. So I believe that he probably doesn't really remember too much about it. But, it didn't, there was no reason for a gun to be pulled at all at that point.
Absolutely. So was that the point where you were like, okay, I might not continue this relationship? Actually, no, I'm so sorry. That was a silly question because you mentioned that, this wasn't it because of the trauma bond. So what was the point where you decided enough is enough?
Yeah, the funny thing is it wasn't me that decided that. I knew it. I knew that I needed to get out of the relationship. But in the end, I wasn't the one that decided. Things started getting ugly. I moved back to my hometown a year ago, and we continued to date. I was away from him, so it was weekends again only, as much as possible. But the turning point for me finally was he had a brother that had a drug overdose, and he died. And that was in the summer of last year. After the funeral, and we were actually not dating, but I did go to support him. And after the funeral, we went back to his family's home, and there were, 20 people there, family. And out of those 20, probably 15 were alcoholics, drinking. So their brother just died of an overdose because he was an addict. But the family was all sitting around getting drunk, talking about how sad it was that his brother had this addiction. And I'm just looking around thinking how sad it is that they don't even realize that they have the same addiction, just a different drug. And it made me sick. It literally made me sick because at that point I realized I can't fix him. I can't, this is so ingrained in his body and his family. It's who they are. There's no fixing of this. I mean, he's watched his brother die, and he's going to do the same thing. His family, so many of his family, they're going to do the same thing. So I ended up leaving that day and telling them I had to go back to work because it's just too much. After that happened, I could tell we were definitely dwindling. I still didn't have the guts to tell him I didn't want to be with him anymore. I actually did tell him I didn't want to be with him anymore. That would last a couple days, and I would go back. But he did crazy things. He texted his ex-girlfriend and told her that she was the love of his life. The last straw was that he came to me and told me that he had a sexually transmitted disease. That he had just found out about it. It gets ugly. And of course I was panicky because this was my partner.
Yeah.
I went and was tested 3 times because I wanted to make sure I was good.
Yeah.
And I was. And so that meant that out of God's grace, that meant that I had been away from him enough that he had been, I feel out on his own, doing his own thing. And he blamed it on COVID first because of, he said that COVID can cause it, which I don't even know if that's true. But then he also blamed it on me and said it was from me. So he never took any credit. He never took credit. And so at that point, I was kind of done. I was just kind of done. There was no, how can you go back to that, you know?
Right.
And so I think at that point, he realized that I was going to love him, but not in a physical way ever again. So he flipped it on me and told me that it was over because I was unstable and wouldn't live with him and wouldn't stay with him, and I had some psychological issues that I needed to work on, and he couldn't deal with that. So he, in the end, is the one that broke it off. Thank God.
And how did that make you feel?
Very cheated because it should have been, I should have gotten to do that. That should have been, I should have been able, but I never would have. I never would have because I truly loved the man. I thought that I truly loved the man. And I would have been there for him forever because I felt that strong for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when you hear yourself say that now, is there any judgment about yourself, or do you have compassion and empathy for all of the very real, logical, and familiar reasons why we can still love someone that does this to us?
I will say that I still love him. Oh goodness, I'm going to try not to cry.
It's okay.
In a 24-year marriage, I never felt the way that I felt about him. Like, I didn't have feelings. I don't believe I was in love. With my boyfriend, the feelings, whether I felt alive, whether that was feeling alive in a positive way or whether it was feeling alive in a negative way, he gave me the gift of feelings. So I think I would have stayed just because I loved feeling again. I loved that. And again, I will say he was a beautiful man. He really was in so many ways. If the alcohol was controlled, it's whenever the alcohol was not controlled is when all the ugly came out. But saying all of that, I do feel that I'm healing. I am trying to date. I went on several dates, and it's been my fault that I've ruined those dates because I have zero trust for anybody anymore. Actually went on a date last week with a man that is absolutely wonderful. And I did explain to him after our first date, I said that I just wasn't ready. It had nothing to do with him. I wasn't ready to date. I still had a lot of healing to do. He understood that, and now I would say I've seen him actually almost every day since I've met him. We've become very good friends. He is a nurse, and he specializes in drug and alcohol addictions.
No. Wow.
Yes.
What are the
and
chances?
He was actually married to an alcoholic. He didn't know it when he married her. So which is funny because here you are specializing in drug and alcohol, and even yourself can be not see the clues. So we became very good friends. I think that's where it'll stay. And I do believe God put us in each other's lives for that reason. And I believe that he might be able to help me heal because I deserve better. I just do. I'm thankful that my boyfriend broke it off in the end because I know my value. I know I don't necessarily know my value, but I know that it's in there, and I know that I'm going to find it, and I know that there's a happy ending out there for me, and I hope to God that all the red flags that I was shown with this fella, I don't forget on my next relationship.
Well, I can tell you, I don't think I absolutely think that you will remember because you're doing your work. You're doing your work. And I'm so proud of you. I think it takes an exceptionally strong woman or man to, even if they weren't the ones ending the relationship, to not stay stuck in that pain and, jump back into old patterns or old behaviors. But you're you're taking your time. You're using, even though your heart is broken right now, you're using your head to heal. You're gaining the knowledge. You're continuing to grow. And that is such a great indicator to me of where you will be in the future if you continue. That to me has all the hope in the world for you and for your future. And I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for not giving up on yourself and your life, and for not, begging him to go back, take you back, or continuing down that path, or remaining stuck. That's a very big victory. It doesn't matter how it ended. What matters is what you do with it.
Well, and I will say that he did end it, but something that I'm a huge advocate for, and I believe that any woman that finally gets out of something like this, no contact, absolutely no contact. I have blocked him from every ounce. The only way he can find me is if he comes to my home physically, and I will shut that down so fast that he can't text me. I've given access to my email to my best friend, and changed my email address so she has my old one. If he wants to try to get a hold of me through that, she will not tell me.
Is this the same best friend that sat with you? Is this the same best friend that sat with you on the outside of the restaurant?
Actually, it's not. I have, and that's the other thing. You
have
need a
good
very
friends.
good support system. I have great friends.
You've got great friends. Your friends deserve a mini award here. How supportive are they?
Yeah, they know. They know what's happened, and they know my heart, and they know that I don't deserve this, and I'm not strong enough to take care of myself, so they're pitching in. And but yes, no contact. That if there's one thing that I can, I hope that anyone hears from this conversation is, once you're out, do not let them seep in, because I've tried several times and I let him seep back in so often, and this time, no, sir, not today.
I love that. And I can feel that. When you say it, I feel it in my gut, and I'm like, she means that. She is sticking to that. I am really proud of you. I thought if we were together, I'd give you a high five, because that, and a hug. Because
I would accept it. Yeah. Thank you.
You'd be very proud of yourself. I can't wait. Will you let me know how you are doing, and so we can follow up and see all of the goodies that are going to come into your life because you're doing this?
I will. I'm not hoping for Mr. Right now. I'm hoping for me to get healthy so that I can find my Mr. Right. So I will.
Totally.
I will keep up to date with you.
That's great. And give your friends a huge high five from our community, because they are kick-ass friends, and we all need friends like that. So good for them. Thank you. Thank you for talking to me. I am so grateful. You were really, really honest with us today, and I know that takes a lot of courage. So thank you for being real honest and real with us about everything that goes on with this disease, because it's so unpredictable. But I love your story. This is good.
Well, I hope I can help others with it. I really do. So thank you for listening.
This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with my personal thoughts and beliefs. We are bonded together by the fact that we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.